Nope, that's gone now. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the PureJoy Podcast, a bi-weekly exploration into what brings people joy. This week, I have on guest Lawrence Jennings, old-time friend of mine, coming up on, I guess, like a decade now. That's wild. Approaching a decade. Holy cow. Yeah. Still great friends. We do a lot together. We hang out weekly, making other projects happen together. And he's here today to talk to us about his joy. So hey Lawrence, how's it going today?
Yeah, hello. It's going good. Got some chores done this morning. Kind of feeling relatively productive today, so that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Having to min-max my time a lot more lately, with work kicking up as it does for everyone. But we're doing pretty good generally speaking.
No, that's great. That's great. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Who you are to us here on the podcast?
So I am Lawrence. I am I guess, podcaster technically, as far as the creative space. And I used to stream on Twitch at the handle Tasty Games 1, and I might come back. I might never come back. Either way, follow, like, and subscribe. It's there if you want it. Otherwise, I am just sort of a guy. I work in AV suddenly. Before that, I was just sort of a radio personality in my hometown, and that's kind of all I've been doing. I kind of just hang out at my house a lot.
Yeah, use your voice in some form or fashion.
Yeah, I can talk a lot. It's not always the most intelligible, but I can certainly say things just
But you
constantly.
Can just keep it going, yeah.
Yeah, that's honestly the biggest thing in the D&D podcast that I am trying to rein in personally is my brain is always on a loop of saying one-liners and dumb bullshit, and I don't always need to repeat them out loud. I've started muting my microphone, and if I have a really good one, I'll unmute it, but
that way you can still say them out loud, but like everyone is caught.
I can't stop.
Yeah,
I cannot stop.
I feel that. I feel that
at this point.
I'm really about the one-liners myself as well, and it is different as a DM to take it and like have all like be doing this thing and then not be able to slip in the one-liner I have going on. Like I'm like, that would be fucking funny, but I like gotta keep going.
Throw a one-liner in the middle of the exposition.
Absolutely wild. I think that I still do, and maybe we'll as we continue and produce future seasons, maybe like we'll be able to like grow into the perfect timing and executions on the one-liners from everyone.
Absolutely. It's all a learning process.
Yeah. So we'd like to start each of these episodes off with something you've found joy in just today, a small joy of the day.
Oh man, today I already showed you this, but I'm going to show it again. This is a vortex mixer. You often use these things for lab equipment, mixing up samples and XYZ thing. I use it to mix paint because I hate shaking paint because I have sore wrists because I play video games and I paint. And now I don't have to do that anymore. I don't have to do that ever again. I just push it down onto the thing, it vibrates, and then it's mixed.
What's the time difference like on shaking versus vortex?
Oh man, it's night and day. Especially like metallic pinks, things with really, really heavy pigment.
Okay.
I might be shaking that thing for about 10 minutes sometimes.
Oh man.
Trying to get a consistent, even mix. This thing, 30 seconds on it, good to go, 100%. Best mix that I could even get, shaking it by hand.
Holy shit, that's a huge difference in time, and especially with like how much you paint and how like
it's a huge game changer.
Yeah,
it's a huge game changer.
100%. Mine is I fucking finally sent my taxes off to my tax person today.
Woo-hoo!
Like I had it all in the email and I clicked send and I was like, whew, that's good. Now I don't have to do it.
The fucking state of Illinois, they were supposed to take it out of my savings account. They took it out of my checkings account. They were lucky that I had all that money because I was gonna be pissed. I was gonna have to raise some hell.
Spaghetti-o. That's rough.
I woke up to a lot of things this morning, and I very quickly had to sort of rectify them all immediately.
Yeah.
Lucky that one wasn't an issue. That one wasn't an issue.
I mean, that's good that it was a quick fix. an easy stressor off the list. This
Absolutely.
took me, I mean, I did them once already and I didn't like what I saw, so I was like, "Ooh, let me hire a person so they can tell me if there's anything extra." And oh boy, did she tell me there's extra. So because this an interesting interaction. So contracting, right? Like
Right.
we get all of the things we can deduct. But
Mhm.
because I also got a tax return from Twitch, even if it's like it was like just under the threshold for having to pay taxes,
Mhm.
but if I just do pay taxes on it, then all of the bleed over from that spending will go into the other one. So that's like
Ooh.
rent, internet, electricity. That's
I
like rent
see.
space.
Yeah.
And they said the biggest room I've used for like the creation of content is the room. So my fucking living room is my office. Like it's just like everything is getting extra taken out, and I'm really
Mhm.
hoping that I notice a big chunk in the other one because
Absolutely.
that's a
Yeah,
huge
I'm keeping a lot more detailed notes this year compared to last year.
yeah.
Because I think I, generally speaking, was able to get all of my deductions pretty fair, but it definitely would have been a lot faster if I just had those numbers already in front of me.
Yeah, yesterday was a day of sitting on my bank account and going
Yep.
through line by line being
Yep,
like,
exactly.
which
Is this something I can deduct?
what does
Is this
this go
something I can
to?
deduct?
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting seeing because like doing Twitch and the AV last year same time, it's interesting seeing the arc of like expenditure on AV increasing while Twitch decreases and then
Yeah,
like
right.
changing as it goes on. It's very weird. Um
Absolutely. Man, all these made up numbers, man, just all the time.
they're all over the fucking place.
Just can't stop them.
Sweet, sweet. So our small joys out of the way. What in life brings you pure joy?
Ooh, okay. So for me, and I don't think you've had one of these on the podcast yet, and I will be surprised if you have another one because there are dozens of us. So for me, the thing that brings me pure joy is ritual magic, most specifically chaos magic. So that is pretty wide concept there. Ritual magic. There's a lot of history behind that,
Mhm.
dating all the way back from before we had history with shamanism and the belief in nature-based gods, the idea of fire as an entity, the idea of water, wind as an entity, XYZ thing. And then as we sort of go through time, magic becomes very heavily co-opted by people who have a lot of free time, specifically rich people. This is especially in like the 16th, 17th, 18th century. They had a lot of free time, and so they made magic very inaccessible, very complicated for no reason. A lot of magical societies existed only for exclusivity. And the guy who sort of started chaos magic as a concept was a guy in the 19th century called Austin Osman Spare. And he was an artist all the way through the 20th century, through World War I, World War II, I think into the 50s even. And he sort of outlined the core concepts of what would eventually become chaos magic. And those core concepts are the relationship, and this is really the important part for chaos, what chaos magic
What the
is.
core concepts are.
Absolutely. It
Okay.
is the relationship between Kia, which is sort of like the universal unconsciousness, the energy of the universe, the sort of it's like the idea that the universe is created by an entity, but it is left alone, like the what is that, the clockwork theory or something like that.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
it's an unfeeling, unknowing, uncaring entity from which everything stems from.
It
And
exists and just does that.
yeah, it exists, and it just sort of, you can interact with it, but you can never really tell it. You can't tell it to do something. It just is. And the ZOS, which is our personal physical form in reality, air quotes, in the reality that we can understand. And chaos magic is the idea that we can utilize the subconscious mind's connection to Kia in order to have an influence here in our reality. And a lot of the time that's used through symbols, rituals in order to sort of get away from the thinking mind in order to have more access to the unconsciousness, and therefore Kia and that power, that spark, that energy, that it has an impact on everything, but we can have some sort of little nudge, little push. It's sort of like a butterfly effect, where
Or
just
like,
that little pebble being tossed into the lake, that is the thing that causes the dam to break or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah, like wading into a river, it like doesn't change the flow of the river except in this one place that you
Except for the very,
occupy.
very, yep, that's exactly
Yes.
right. The the
Um,
the Kia flows constantly through both reality and the immaterium and whatever else there is that we can't even process. And chaos magic is the way that you can influence that flow in whatever small way.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, a lot of this concept is pretty heady. I remember when like literally I think what sparked my interest in it was we were talking even before the podcast was an episode of this show based on another podcast called The Midnight Gospel, in
Absolutely.
which, as they journeyed throughout this episode, the main character sort of got a lesson into the chaos
Ritual
magics, ritual
ritual
magics in
magic,
some form or
yeah,
fashion.
the
Yeah.
occult
And it
writ
was just so
large.
intriguing. I bought a couple books, and that was really as far as I got, because cracking the books and attempting to parse what is written is a task.
It is an undertaking.
Yes, it's
Absolutely.
absolutely like a
Absolutely.
personal journey, because like you have to read a paragraph and then reread a paragraph and then let it sit and then reread it again and then move on and then like read them both in
Absolutely.
conjunction. And
I would say only over the last 2 years have I considered myself a practicing chaos magician. And that is because I've had an interest, a passing interest in the occult, in Aleister Crowley, in all of this long history of ritual magic, the occult. And you have to really have a lot of effort to really crack that sort of first layer. Being able to not even read the books that are the source books, the original writings, like the Book of the Law, Aleister Crowley, or the uh, the Book of Pleasure from Austin Osman Spare. All of these things are like the fourth or fifth thing that you can read, because if you try to just go straight at them, it's not helpful. It's not understandable. You don't have the baseline knowledge that you need in order to parse these
I
things.
mean, which came later, right? Like as a text, because when we're talking about like back when they were writing these texts, they were written again, like you said, to have some form of inclusivity in this group. Like it's not
Absolutely.
just about what you're reading, but it's you have to do this in conjunction with what we are teaching you and what we are passing along to you.
Absolutely. And
Which
especially orders like I was talking about earlier, the rich people and very exclusive rather orders, they wrote things to be intentionally obtuse, intentionally hard to understand, and that you so much so that you needed somebody who was already a member of the order to explain these things to you
Mhm.
in order for them to make any kind of sense.
So that's why you have to read the more future works before you can read the past works, because we
That
don't
has
have
been
that
my
context of like being in the
Absolutely.
society.
Absolutely. That has been my process. I don't have any personal desire to join. I think the modern example for chaos magic specifically is the Illuminates of Thanateros. And I believe they still have a presence, but it's just not what I am after. The concept of it being a personal journey, a personal desire for growth, a personal desire for um, just the. It's not something that you get to experience every day. The mindset that you have to get into in order to um, pursue this type of thing. I just think it's very. It's not what you think about in a common everyday situation. The mindset that you get into in order to perform a ritual, in order to launch a sigil or whatever type of magic that you're doing at the particular point in time, it's just not the mindset that you walk around every day with. It's very interesting. It's a fun diversion.
It's a very removed mindset. You're trying to
Absolutely.
pull yourself out of your presence in this space and open it up to the wider flow around you, which is difficult to do and intriguing to read these practices and see and be able to like sit down and begin to process like what's going down in these rituals.
Absolutely. And in my understanding, a lot of learning about the occult is just sort of being open to new ways of looking at things, new understanding. So for me, whenever I think about ritual magic, the first image that would come to my head is always meditation. It's always that stillness that brings clarity, or like being so removed from the immediate that you can more freely access the subconscious. But in chaos magic and other practices, there's also the opposite of that. There's the inhibitory methods, and then there's the excitatory methods. In chaos magic, it's referred to together as gnosis, which is just sort of an altered state of mind. And sometimes we think about that as drugs, psychedelics, alcohol, but that could also just be dancing. That can be chanting. That can be meditation. That can be what is referred to as death posture, which is various ways that you can hold yourself, and you hold yourself as still as possible. You breathe as long, slow breaths as possible. You really try to remove yourself from the physical presence in order to more access the subconscious. And then once you're finished with the ritual, the important thing is to then forget about it. You have made you've cast that pebble, and that pebble now is going to go do its own thing, and you don't have to think about it ever again.
So we've been talking a lot about these rituals, these like like affecting just this small point in the river flowing around us, but like what are you doing this for? Like what is an outcome of a ritual? Is it like to get a thing? Is it to improve in a way? Like what is
Well, so
this
that's sort of the
process?
interesting thing, because it's especially with chaos magic, because chaos magic doesn't have as rigorous, like, for example, this is a love ritual. This is how you are going to get affection from a particular party. Like, there's not a strict set of guidelines or strict set of rituals. It's more like workbooks. It's more like this is an example of what you can do to affect XYZ thing. So for a more concrete example, let's say that you wanted to win a prize from a raffle. You wanted to specifically do sort of a luck-based ritual. Chaos magic is really open-ended, because the things that have power are the things that we, as a people, as a psychic entity within the universe, as humans, we've given it that power. So like you might I don't know specifically off the top of my head an example of a god of luck, but you might take on you might dress like that particular god. You might get a bunch of four-leaf clovers around. You might draw some symbols that have associations to luck within your own personal life. And then you would try to reach gnosis, whichever method you tried, whether that be meditation or heavy focus on a symbol. Like you might create a sort of simplified representation of what you're trying to affect, what it is that you're trying to influence. And you can intensely focus on that symbol. And once you reach the height of gnosis, you have sort of fired that symbol. You have released it into the ether. You've given it to Kia, and Kia will do with it what it will. And at that point, you sort of want to maybe perform a banishing ritual to sort of further separate yourself from the luck ritual that you may have just performed. And at that point, you're supposed to sort of forget that you have done it. A lot of people are very big on taking notes within a magical journal. maybe do a representation of whatever symbol that you've written down, maybe a brief description of your ritual. And then pretty much from there, you don't really want to think about it until you have either noted it as a success or a failure. So, for example, in the I want to win the prize at this raffle. That's a pretty explicit example because you could just say, no, I didn't win it. Yes, I did win it. But sometimes it's a lot more
Esoteric.
yeah, it's a lot less of a specific example. So yeah, there are margining levels of success, and that could be based on any infinite amount of factors, frankly. And that is kind of like the fun. You're influencing it just a little bit, and either it'll work out great or it won't. And
You may not. So like, yeah, so like this all seems like I'm really really big into metaphors. Pulled up a river.
yeah, yeah.
Like
This is a hard topic to talk about.
you get a ball rolling down a hill, and then you want to like watch it go down that hill. It'll end up at any point down the hill, and you'll know that you got it rolling down the hill, but you can't just chase after it and keep pushing it,
Exactly.
because then you're affecting like where it lands. It's not you calling the target of where it lands. It's you saying, I kind of want it to go in this direction.
Absolutely.
Take it
And
where you will.
with chaos magic specifically, and you still want to give yourself the highest chance of success possible. Like you're not going to win a raffle that you didn't enter, no matter what ritual that you perform, no matter how powerful you think you are, no matter how effective your magic has been in the past. It's really, really, really hard to win a contest that you didn't sign up for.
I mean, the concept the concept isn't like the concept of like win or fail, and having like doing a ritual on just this balance of like only two outcomes is you're gonna less see the difference in the way the ball rolled, right?
Absolutely.
Whereas like if it's like I need to affect maybe my overall success in the near future, the ball can hit any part of the bottom of that hill and you are succeeding in some form or fashion. The
Absolutely.
the bridge is opened up on balance there.
Yeah, the thing I think for me that made me feel the most magical in recent memory, just for another concrete example, is they talk a lot in the text about chaos magic about being more perceptive to random chance, because things are a lot more connected than we give them credit for, and also within the mindset of someone who performs ritual magic, being more cognizant of the connections that might be a little bit less, like numerology is a good example, I think, where you're not necessarily reading into what seven means in this context, but seven might pop up a lot of times during your day, and that is something that you might be able to pick up on the more that you think in this mindset.
And then in
Like,
that case, it's not about finding the number 7, but it's like what that represents in this moment being connected to
why
another
why
momentary of 7.
why do I continue to be presented with a seven?
Yes, and like what experience in my day was that 7 involving, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Not
Absolutely,
like, oh,
absolutely.
there was 7 pennies, so it must be pennies, but it's like, okay, around this structure of 7 pennies on the ground, there is, all these things flowing.
For me,
Um,
it's colors. Colors are the things that I notice most often because I spend a lot of time whenever I'm traveling for work in different cities and places that I haven't been to before necessarily. And I think it's always interesting, especially in what is often sort of the same color palette, like a hotel conference space. It's often the same sort of color palette. And so there will be colors that will stick out. And then it's interesting to then throughout the day see that color again over and over and over. And you never know 100% what that means, but it's always fun to take note of. It's a nice little exercise
do you feel like
in
you
magical thinking.
do you feel like that has affected any of your decisions in like focusing on that? Like maybe about like because you're in other cities, so maybe about like where to eat, what to do in your free time. Does that like
I
affect
think
those
so.
things?
I think so. It isn't necessarily always, the positive thing. It also is sometimes things to avoid. But I think that being more cognizant of that, like the universe is random, but our perception is not. the things that the associations that we can imply upon things, that is, don't ignore your intuition. That's a pretty good piece of advice, generally speaking, but especially whenever you're trying to exercise magical thinking. Just sort of any connection, any spark of interest, any idea that might seemingly come from nowhere, that doesn't have to be the way that you think about it. Just
Yeah.
because something is random doesn't mean it's meaningless.
Yeah, I mean that's a great point. There is meaning in the random. You just have to try to parse that, and then also be understanding that even if you parse it and you're like, this is it for sure, that may in fact not be it at all, and
Absolutely.
that you've just found
And
meaning.
just because it is the meaning in the moment doesn't mean it will always be the meaning.
Right, right. Things grow and shift. Looking back on it could bring very different connection to like where you're going. So is chaos excuse me. So is chaos magic about, do you think, more living in the present or in the future?
For me, personally, I think it has brought my perception a lot more into the present. Um, you- as far as it goes, chaos magic for me has sort of replaced spirituality for me. I don't really like. It's not necessarily the God that is powerful. It is the concept. It is the power that we have given to
The
these
belief in the
concepts.
god.
Absolutely. And I think that it has, I am less worried about the future, I think, because I'm still taking these steps in order to give myself the best outcome possible.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, you can never have 100% control of anything.
Right.
And I think that that's probably the number one thing that it has given me, is it has let me let go of the things that I should be letting go of. I don't try to influence things that I either have no reason to or have no power within the arena. Um,
Does that hinder you from making decisions on the things that are important? Have you found yourself like missing a decision maybe you should have made? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I guess I don't know
yeah,
where that
thus
question is going.
thus far, I don't think it has necessarily hindered me. I think it's given me a different perspective. Like I'm able to. I feel like I'm more able to look at something in multiple perspectives better nowadays.
Yeah.
I feel like I used to be very strict in my mindset. Either thing is X thing is X thing, and it's that forever.
It's either not stressful
Um,
or is stressful, and I'll take care of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And so I think that it has been a net positive.
That's
You know,
great.
it would be my pure joy if it wasn't something that I've been enjoying keeping up with so
Yeah.
far.
Yeah, that's fair. That's
Right?
fair. No, I mean that's true. That's true. I find that like there's also like, I guess on that note, like what about it is most challenging to you? Like doing it, learning about it,
Oh,
how
I
it
think
it feels like a
for
very challenging subject.
for me it is the sort of rigor. Like I'm not a hugely disciplined person, just in general. I am very forgetful, very mismanaged a lot of times, very messy. But it is a good outlet to sort of develop those skills, because it is entirely self-driven. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? I don't have a like I don't have a textbook to work through. You know what I mean? I just have concepts, and then I have to apply these concepts as I will.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I don't really know. A lot of these
No.
things just sort of putter out, and that's sort of been my experience. But you just have to stick with it, and the more that it's like with anything, the more that you practice at it, the better you get at it.
I mean, and maybe being open to that flow of like when it putters out and when it's falling back into your life is also important. I mean, if you have this if you have this connection with it, then maybe at some times it isn't like, life pulls it away from you for that reason, or, the
Absolutely,
universe.
and I think that it is another thing that I think heeding that call of inspiration, I think, is important, because much with one of the big things that is a warning for anybody who pursues this sort of knowledge and wants to participate in ritual magic. you can't you can't become obsessed with it. The most dangerous thing I think is somebody who thinks that they know everything about it, and that is not somebody who is using it properly. You know what I mean? What's the there's an aphorism. I can't remember the name. I can't remember the exact phrasing of it, but it's essentially a person. Nah, can't even remember it. If I remember it, I'll send you a recording, and you can just plug it in right there, and it'll be like, oh man, he really said that impactful. He's very wise right there. No,
He
no.
even quoted the person who said it. That's incredible. Date and everything. No, that's yeah. I think that I mean, it sounds like a big portion of it is living in the learning. Like you're never gonna stop growing and discovering as long as you are doing it with because
It's extremely open-ended. That's really the struggle of talking about it. Is it's all of it is such
yeah.
open-ended concepts.
So yeah, coming at it, I think coming at it with like an obsession in doing it, thinking that you have got it down, thinking that you know how to control it all is I mean, doesn't that would inherently
Hubris.
separate you from the like ability to what did you call it? What was the N word to space yourself out to
Oh, gnosis.
gnosis.
Hmm.
I will probably cut out me asking that question and we'll get
Oh
around
yeah,
to
no,
me.
there'll be some edits. That's the thing about podcasts is that you can edit it.
Oh man.
There's going to be some
Gnosis.
stiff edits in this
I
episode,
don't know.
and that's okay.
It's been flowing like as long as my edits generally go for like a moment like this where I was like, "Oh fuck, what was this thing?" And then the pauses like as long as we're flowing, we're flowing. I'm going to leave it.
Hmm. Hmm.
But like okay, so being sort of blanketed in that obsession of assuming that you know everything and doing it all already right, you're I think inherently pulling yourself out of that gnosis, right? Like you're not you there's
Yeah,
no
I
way
think
that you can
so.
give yourself over to that fully if you feel like you are in control.
Absolutely. I think that the feeling of control is it's not real. It is an illusion. It is something that you are I think a lot about the psychic sensor, which is the concept that our brains try to hide things that are super difficult for us to process. So, for example, the thing that I'm trying to do right now is I'm working on astral viewing, and step one for that is in a dream state, you have to notice that you're in a dream, and then find your hands. Because if you think about it, me personally, I've never once seen my own hands in from my own personal point of view. I've never seen my own hands in my dreams.
It's so hard to parse if I have or haven't in a dream. I
It's
don't
hard to think about it, but I've thought about it a lot, and I really don't think I've ever once seen my own hands in a dream.
Do you
And I'm
often
hoping
remember
that
your dreams? Are you one to remember them often? Because I am not, and I'm curious,
I
like
wasn't for a very long time. I as a child I had like 4 or 5 recurring dreams that I would always remember. But other than that, I don't remember a huge lot of them. And
yeah.
then I would say,
I
from the collective trauma that was 2020 through 2022, 23, I pretty much didn't have any memory of any dreams that I had that whole time, but
mhm.
all that is coming back to me now.
Do you think that
Um,
that's due to your focus on this like this
I think
subject?
I'm trying to remember them.
You're
I think I'm trying
trying.
to remember them a lot more now.
Does
And
it
also, I have this mission. I have this goal. I want to see my own hands in this dream because I think that I will be able to overcome at least that boundary within the psychic sensor.
the
And I think
search
that
for my
trying
own
to
hands?
overcome, yeah, that's really. I think that will be my trigger moment, and then I will be able to overcome that more easily in the future. Because if I am in my dream state and I can find my hands every time, I can always immediately trigger that lucid dreaming
Do
response.
you think that that has anything to do with control? Because without like access to your controlling mitts, like how do you control the space around you? Like
I think that makes sense.
in a
It's
dream, you're gonna do it
influence.
mentally anyway. You're gonna
Yeah,
like you're not just gonna. I mean, you could, but you're not like the concept is that you like imagine it into reality.
yeah. I think it is the. I think that sort of symbol could be replaced with anything. Like if you're if you're like somebody who has a big collection of books, for example, like maybe your dream trigger is, oh, if I ever find issue 16 of Ultimate Spider-Man, I'll know, oh, hey, I'm in a dream. I can control this now. But for me, I especially because like I play video games, I'm very tactile, do a lot of painting, do a lot of things with my hands. I'm very familiar with my hands, and I think that that is something that I can always come back to once I get over the hurdle of actually finding the dang things in my dream.
Hmm. Do you think that has anything to do with the block of finding them as well? Do you
I
think
think so. I
the
think that
pressure on yourself to do that
I think
in
it would
that
work the
state?
same with anyone's particular symbol. I think that the brain, like especially like the lizard brain part of it, that just doesn't like danger, doesn't like seeing predators, wants to escape danger, wants to escape things that are hard to process.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it
I
sounds
think
like a
that
lot
that's
of this is
just.
being along for the journey, and so, like, attempting to look for any one part can make that harder to find sometimes. But,
Mhm.
I mean, in your search, you've been it's interesting, there's, like, such a balance to it because you've been developing out a skill, even if you haven't found your hands yet, you've been developing out the skill to, like, look around a bit more in those cases and, like, maybe see other things in your dreams and maybe miss some things because you're looking for your hands, but it is still that's such a funny, sentence. It's still it's still, I think, important because 'cause you're growing through this in the way that it seems like you need to be, whether you're finding the exact things, i.e. your hands, that you are missing. It is very interesting how close this you had said earlier on that it is, like, replaced spirituality for you,
Mhm.
like process of learning magic and doing it.
Yeah. At its core, religion feels like at least the intention for what religion is desire for self-growth, a desire to be more like this figurehead, more like a godlike being. And I think that magic is interesting in the way that that's not necessarily the end goal. The end goal is just to be more dot dot dot.
Whatever that means for
Yeah.
you in this moment, yeah.
And for me in this current moment, it is I just want to find my hands, man.
Really wanna win that raffle.
I've had so many dreams recently that I will wake myself up because I will be doing whatever. For a recent example is I was playing the idea of the dream was I was at an airsoft venue and I was getting ready to play, but I could never finish getting ready.
Dang.
I just kept putting on more bags,
Uh,
like, over and over. Like, I had 3 backpacks on for some reason, and I put on the 3rd backpack, and I was like, "Wait a minute, where are my hands?" And then I woke up.
just
And
missed it.
yeah, and I think that the things like that I would never experience without this particular path of trying to learn chaos magic and stuff like that. And that I think is probably my number one favorite thing about it is that no matter how seriously you take it, it's always goofy. I never at any point in any of my dreams before thought to myself, "Hey, where are my hands?" And now it is funny enough to wake me up.
I wake up chuckling every time.
Much to the chagrin of my fiance. You don't want your partner to wake up chuckling looking at their hands.
Sweet. Sweet.
But I
Found
haven't
them.
woken them up on that yet, so that's good.
That's pretty funny.
Sleep
Hey, give me
soundly.
just 1 second, I'm gonna run to the bathroom real quick. Oh, sweet. Okay, so where where's a good place for someone to start in all of this? Like, where's a good direction for someone to go if they have
So
no idea what we've been talking about and they are interested?
the two best books, 100%, are Condensed Chaos by Phil Hine. And this is pretty much all this is the closest thing to a workbook. This is all very concrete examples of implementation of magical concepts. And then the other book this is sort of the proto original like collected works for chaos magic. This is Peter J. Carroll's Liber Null. And that is the most extensive broad strokes overview of pretty much every concept that goes into the chaos magic train of thought.
This sort of preparatory reading for the more intense and important readings still.
Absolutely. So I think if you're just interested in trying out doing practical magic right here, if you want to have a better understanding of it, Liber Null.
Yeah.
Both of those great books. You can read Austin Spare's work if you want to. It's really hard to parse. It took me probably a month to get through the main portion, which is just half of this. And yeah, it's just a lot of reading and rereading, really because it's all automatic writing. And so it's just sort of opium-induced rambling sometimes.
What is automatic writing?
Profound. Automatic writing is it is not self-written. You have an assistant who is basically listening to you mumble and rant, mostly rant. And then they're the person who is taking down these notes. It's sort of like a memo.
I mean, I feel like there has been a time in my life, once you introduced this concept to me, I realized that I think, were you there as well? It was like you, me, Ezra, and Gabe in Ezra's old apartment back in old KV. And we did I think we all like broke down a thing for Ezra to write on these huge sheets of paper. Do you remember that? And then afterwards,
I do remember what you're talking about. Yep.
I feel like that is in existence somewhere around still, and it's just so intriguing.
We found our way into something that felt very profound in that moment.
It felt profound in that moment, and I feel like afterwards I still felt a pretty big connection to it, even though I was like in a normal state of mind again. It was very, very strange. The intensity, I think, of what we wrote for us. Like, obviously,
Absolutely.
To read it out loud to a stranger would be absolutely kooky. But, like, we definitely found something in these ramblings that was so much more intense. And I bet directed, like, going into that with a reason, saying, like, this is what I'm focused upon breaking down, and having someone write that down would be a lot more intense.
Yeah, I think that is it's referred to in the Liber Null as chemognosis, the use of drugs in order to develop gnosis. It's very, very difficult because you got to keep a lot of focus, and it's hard to keep a lot of focus in those states. But we really found it. We found that focus right there at the end of that one.
We auto wrote.
Yep, that's pretty much the best example of auto writing for my own personal life that I can give. 100%, that's what that was.
Yeah. That's interesting. So a lot of Austin Spare's work is auto writing, like it's not he wrote it, but someone else wrote it from his words.
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting.
He again, it's a lot. It's based around his appreciation and understanding of the subconscious.
And they're not trying to make sense of what he's saying. They're just writing down what he is saying. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, and that is where he outlines the initial ideas for what Kia is, what he refers to as Kia, the relationship between Kia and Zos. And that is, it just gets more complicated from there. He has a lot of thoughts, and they are disjointed.
Are all of his works auto-written in this way?
No, just the ones that are based on the basis for chaos magic.
Okay.
I think he has done other auto writing, but generally he was a visual artist. That is where most of his work originates, in visual art.
For him, that is a visual experience. He's just describing sort of what he's he's seeing. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, he was very in touch with some very interesting concepts, but Definitely hard to parse. Definitely hard to
So
parse.
there's a couple books to get started on, the little workbook, a little like understanding the basis book in Liber Null. What about just like, is there any like basic practices that can help someone in beginning to read these, even, I don't know, breathing practices, thought
Yeah,
practices?
I think for me it was just because it's the least prep that you need. I think that if you can just find a comfortable dark space and just become comfortable meditating, like being able to just not think about anything. It's a really, really tough thing initially. Like I am somebody who has ADHD, and so the idea of trying to think nothing, that was a long road in and of itself. But being able to do that opens up a lot of more interesting exercises. Um, and I think it's always easier to do the excitatory methods. So if you start with inhibitory, I think that that's a better path. But your mileage may vary. You might be somebody who meditation comes very easily to, and in which case I would say practice the opposite. It's okay to be uncomfortable because it is an altered state of mind.
Breaking down a wall that you have felt comfortable behind for a long
Yeah,
time without realizing it.
yeah. I think developing an appreciation for being uncomfortable, I think, is a huge that's a huge concept in magical thinking, I think.
Yeah.
um any time that you delve into the esoteric and magic, you're probably going to find something that makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable. Being open to that, not rejecting that, that's important.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like that's gotta bleed into other parts of your life, even, um, non-consciously? Subconsciously, that, like, throughout your day, you're just more open to receiving what is coming and not forcing the path you see in front of you.
Hmm. Yeah, chaos magic, it's a meme. It's a huge meme because chaos magic, a lot of the time, it is what it is,
And you love
you know.
memes.
And I do a lot of my thinking is in memes, 100%.
Chaos magic really applies for that. Cool. Cool, cool, cool. So then, yeah. Is there anything about chaos magic, things on this subject that we haven't like touched on? I know it's like very heady, but is there anything that you think about it, or you're like a favorite part of it, or
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think that the other if you're somebody who has any interest in the occult or the ideas behind magical thinking or the history and stuff like that, there's a great series called The Last Podcast on the Left. And they have done episodes on Aleister Crowley. They've done episodes on Peter Carroll. They've done episodes on chaos magic specifically, left hand path, right hand path magic. If you just want a very funny, silly little broad strokes, like it was my entry point for all of this stuff. So go check out those guys over at Last Podcast on the Left. They don't need the plug. They're like number 4 on the Billboard charts, but like they're
they
great
need it from
resource.
you?
They're a great resource to be introduced to this kind of stuff. You know,
Mhm.
I wouldn't be here in this way if it wasn't for them being there in their way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and being open to, I mean, that's like the flow of it. I feel like a lot of this too is, we've talked about it in the past, not necessarily here, but like it's involved in those societies because there is a power to your words and to being open to this. Like sometimes in this process, it isn't like chaos magic couldn't make sense to you until you're introduced to it. Like the right piece said in the right way can unlock that door for you to like really go down the thing. Because I don't know, the first time I feel like even though it inspired me to like actually get a book or two and read up on it, I don't think that was the first time I was introduced to the concept of chaos magic, but it was the way that they spoke about it, and how that opened my brain up to it. And I think that like any different approach to it is always a beneficial approach, especially to a subject such as this, where it's just sort of all
Yeah.
over the board.
Yeah, and absolutely. Like I said, I'm kind of a silly, goofy guy, and that podcast is a pretty goofy, silly time.
The
And
Soofigiliest podcast.
yeah, and so I think being able to find the humor in it early, that definitely drew me to it.
Mhm.
100%.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay, so then I think in drawing to a close, where can someone find joy in this subject of chaos magic? Where have you found joy? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of books written about it. If you find a book that you like, you don't even necessarily have to read chaos magic specific book. Just read a book about magic. Magic's fun. Magic's wild. There's a wild long history about this kind of thing. And I think that whether you're a history buff, if you like any period, if you like reading about any period in history, they were practicing magic then. So read some magic
So
about
find
that.
it.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's interesting. It is very historic and it gives you a lot, like especially if you're into history and if you're into even like spirituality. As long as you are open to being challenged, that is okay. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. Fantastic. Well, I appreciate you making the time to come on out and talk to us about chaos magic today.
Woohoo.
Yeah. It was great having you on. Things got a little heady, but you know, as with reading chaos magic, it probably could help to go back and just re-listen again. Maybe you'll find a new piece in what was said that helps you make more connections to the
Maybe you
things you've
won't.
heard, and
Oh
maybe you
well.
won't, and you'll have listened to it twice, and I'll really appreciate that. But yeah, I appreciate you coming on out, making the time to come on the podcast and
Totally.
share your experience with us. We're gonna close up here. But yeah, if as he said in the beginning, if there is ever a moment in which he returns to streaming, definitely go check out Lawrence on Twitch under Tasty Games One, the tastiest of games. Before he was Games with 6 M's, it was Games, and that was pretty
Yeah.
much the
You
worst
know,
handle I've ever seen.
like I said, I think it's really funny to be sort of esoteric and imperceptible, but that's really not the play whenever you are making a Twitch handle.
Oh no. Yeah, no, it definitely wasn't. It was a very funny one for a long time, and I'm glad you wrote out that joke as
I
long
still
as
think
you
it's
did.
funny.
It is
I
very
still think it's
funny.
funny.
Um, yeah, it is very funny. I think the tasty game switch is like perfectly on brand for games. Keeps the joke alive in
The
a way.
natural evolution.
Absolutely. Yeah, but I'm gonna do some close up stuff here. We'll chat soon. Bye bye. Make sure I hit the right button here. All right. All right. Let me get over here, folks. I think it's this one. It is this one instead. All right. No, God damn it. I wish I knew how to just. It feels like OBS updated and has totally ruined a lot of my scenes, but whatever. I can edit that out. So. Can I? I don't know. Yay! All right, everybody, welcome on back. I want to appreciate all of you for coming on out and joining us on this episode of the PureJoy Podcast with my guest, Lawrence Jennings, longtime friend of mine and practicer of chaos magic. He came on today to talk to us about that, chaos magic and what it's done for his life. It is a very heady subject. It's a very difficult to parse subject. There's a lot going on, and a lot of it is about releasing yourself from the need to understand and just allowing yourself to experience this thing and maybe you just realize how that connects with another experience because every step along the way is important. Each realization is important, but each one isn't this grand life-changing thing. They lead down the path, and chaos magic is about opening yourself up to realizing the path that you're on and the effect that you can have on the flow of the river around you. Very heady, very all over the place. But if you ever want a little bit of control, that's weird to say in the lack of control because all of this is about, right, like losing that sense of need of control, but in doing that you open yourself up to be able to see what you can affect around you, right? It's difficult to use the right words. It's not about controlling this situation, but you are affecting it. Like you don't get to say, like we said in the podcast, like where down the hill the ball will land. But if you get it moving down the hill, you know that it'll eventually end up at the bottom. And maybe it'll be right where you want it to be, or maybe it'll be far to the left. And it's about the meaning behind where that ball has landed. And I know, like, again, a very heady subject, difficult to parse, but definitely worth a re-listen. As we said, like with the readings, you the purpose, like the need to move forward here is a read, parse, reread, parse, extra read. Now put it all together and parse what this all means together, and like what this means to you, and what connections you are able to make through this. And so a re-listen here will probably bring a ton of extra realization for yourself, or maybe just another interest in this new subject of chaos magic. Not new in terms of the world, but new in terms of something we've presented on the podcast. Yeah. Yeah, very heady, very ethereal talks, but I really appreciate you folks coming on out and joining on this episode of the podcast. I want to thank Lawrence again for making the time to come on out and being open with us and attempting to help us parse this wildly sort of dispersed subject. I want to appreciate Mayonnaise and Murda for allowing me to use their music in the edits of the podcast. We got Little Thang for all the transitions by Murda. It is unreleased, but you can find the rest of his music on Spotify, Apple Music, SoundCloud, wherever you find your music, and Mayonnaise as well. In all those places, he gives us missions to use for our intro and outro here, so we really appreciate him. And then I want to thank all of you for coming on out and joining on this episode of the Pure Joy Podcast. It's been a pleasure as always, folks. Until next time. Nope. It's been a pleasure as always, folks, and we'll see you next time.